What deadlift suit would I recommend? So I get this question a lot. So speaking from experience, I've tried Inza, I've tried Titan, I've tried Metal. The ones that I recommend definitely to start off in terms of the context of Strongman is definitely Metal. And I would specifically try and get your hand on a Metal King Pro if you haven't got much experience of lifting in a suit before. So the thing with adjustable straps is it's going to give you that benefit of being able to crank up the tightness as you need it, as you get more confident, and it's going to give you a little bit more leeway in terms of learning how to, I suppose, get tighter as you go along. Whereas if you get one with fixed straps, you're just not buying yourself a margin for error, to learn, and because I feel like if you learn, as you learn, you get more confident and more comfortable. Well, you get more comfortable being tight and uncomfortable, more comfortable being uncomfortable, but also you get more skilled at achieving a decent start position despite feeling uncomfortable. So it is a very important thing. And obviously with the adjustable straps, you can scale it up as you go along in terms of how tight you go, basically. So the great thing about the Metal ones, so if you go to the Metal website, you'll be able to see here that if you go to the Metal website and have a browse through there, just search for, so go metal.fi, translate it into whatever language you are, English, and then I just search for deadlift in here, and this is what you can get. So you can get Jack Sumo, Jack Deadlift, King Pro. So speaking in the context of Strongman, I would definitely recommend single ply versus multi-ply. So in terms of the Metal, the single ply is the Metal King Pro, which is a little bit cheaper, and the multi-ply is the Jack. So going back to the principle that I've said about being comfortable, being uncomfortable, as an entry level suit, the King Pro is going to be fantastic, because how I would describe it would be, for somebody who hasn't worn a suit before, imagine you're wearing a singlet that's made out of the same material as your jeans, and the King Pro is almost like the single ply is almost like a pair of jeans with a little bit of flex in them that feel like as you bend down, they don't feel like they're going to kind of snap. They're just giving you a bit of tension as you go down or whatever. Whereas the multi-ply feels like just really, really stiff and really, really uncomfortable, and almost like less springy and less elastic, and almost like you're having to push against it more and more rigid. But a lot of people will report that they'll be able to lift slightly heavier with the multi-ply. So as you get more advanced, it is definitely an option worth looking into. So some people say that with multi-ply that it's more suited for getting that extra couple of percent on a max, but a lot of people find it uncomfortable to rep in, whereas you might find that having the single ply and you're doing a deadlift for reps in the suit, you may find that the single ply is more comfortable. The Metal Jack, the Metal King Pro is more comfortable to keep on for working for a set of 60 seconds, for example. Another thing to consider, if you're doing like a deadlift medley, for instance, you're going to really struggle if you've got a relatively tight multi-ply suit. You're going to be really slow at getting down to the bar. So I find that multi works really well if you're going for a really heavy single, and you've got your straps. You can almost use the straps to assist you pulling yourself down to the bar. Whereas the King Pro, you're going to be and the single ply, you're going to be a lot quicker getting down into position. So in terms of what sizes to go for, I would recommend that. I would recommend it going a little bit too big rather than risking a little bit too tight. So I would the measurements that you go off the website. I haven't seen anybody that go for the measurements on the website and they get a custom fit and they've had a good experience with it. So let me know in the comments if you've had a good experience with this, because it'll be news to me. What I find that if people will often measure themselves up on the website, realize that the measurements are slightly odd, think that they need a custom fit, then deliberate and then potentially buy a custom fit one. And the problem with the getting one custom made for somewhere like metal is, I think they are assuming that you already know what you're doing, and you say like an equipped powerlifter where a third of their sport is based around like pulling in a suit basically, whereas so obviously they're assuming that you're further down the progression pathway of skill level. So you'll find that, say, powerlifters over time maybe get a tighter suit and get better at getting into a smaller suit, etc. Whereas for us competing in strongman, with it being such a small proportion of the things that we need to train, and therefore just your time spent practicing it and time you can allocate to practicing it, I think you'd have most people have more success buying themselves a bigger margin for error and almost risking. You're almost better, in my opinion, risking not getting much out of it, but being able to get down and get a feel for it and get into position. Because there are methods what you can do to enhance the tightness, i.e. crank up the straps, i.e. wearing, say, like padding it out with like neoprene shorts, wear a couple of pairs of neoprene shorts. You can wear joggers that can just make it go tighter. You can wear underbelts, you can wear hoodies that just make you increase that tension and make everything a little bit tighter. Whereas if it's too tight to get on, or if you manage to get it on, but then you like, so I see so many people spending a lot of money getting the suit on, they're so excited, and then they can't even get down to the bar, and then they think that it's deadlift suit isn't for me kind of thing. You hear it all the time, people trying suits, whereas realistically it's just that the sizing is just too tight for you to learn in. And even if it's a little bit too tight and you can get down to position, like so many people, I've seen it so many times where people get down to position and they just don't feel that it's just so uncomfortable for the amount of benefit that they're getting out of it. So I would say, if you can err on the side of caution, go a little bit bigger with a view to being able to crank up the tightness using the methods that I've suggested, if possible, because obviously I know that it's a big investment and they're expensive. Borrow one, go and try somebody's on who lifts. Like if you're an under eight, if you're a weight class strongman and you want to come to my gym and try some of my suits, like I've got suits that will fit people ranging from say 70 kilos up to maybe 110, 115, 120. So feel free to come. Let me know in the comments if you want to come and try. So rough sizing off the top of my head, I'd say under 80s. So men, say 46 to 48 usually, roughly, in terms of the Metal King Pro sizes and the Metal Jack. Under 90s, 48 to 50. To 52 maybe, and then 105s maybe 50 to 56. They go up in two, so 52, 54, 56, etc. So personally, I've done I think the tightest one I've used is a 46 Metal Jack, and I've pulled maybe 310 or something in that. Feels really tight, really stiff. probably one of the best pulls I've ever done was actually an under 90s comp wearing a size 50 Metal King Pro. The size 50, a lot of people would say that for an under 90, it's too loose. You should be wearing a 48 or trying to get into a 46. But it just felt so good, felt really comfortable, could get it on myself. That was when I pulled my first 300 in competition, was with a size 50, weighing in at 89.6 or whatever. Felt really good. My raw was probably about 270 at the time, so getting about 10% out of it. So that was bang on perfect. So you see people really struggling to get themselves into position and stuff, and it's not necessarily giving you that much of a benefit. I would say, as a general rule, if you can aim for 10%, then that's absolutely brilliant. If you're getting much more than 10%, I would say probably go and build your raw up. If you're getting less than 10%, then practice. And if you're doing loads of practice and you're still getting less than 10% more than your raw, just message me and I'll help you out. So where to buy? So I've covered that. GoMetal.fi for the metal ones. Europe versus USA. So you see a lot of the European lifters are using metal. I would definitely recommend getting one secondhand if you can. So looking at websites such as Facebook groups such as Powerlifting Kit for Sale, and I would say the going rate would be between 100 and say 120 pounds secondhand. You'll very often find that when you buy secondhand, they're very often pretty much brand new, because they'll very often be from people who've bought one, realize it doesn't fit, thrown it in the corner for however long, and then they've put it up for sale. So you can get some bargains for secondhand. So that have a look at that as a going rate. If you're in the US, you see have a look at the Titan website, the INSA website. I'm unsure about the sizings, but I would say take a similar principle of what I've said about where the metal ones. I would say start off with a single ply that is with adjustable straps, and especially if you're a weight class athlete who's cutting weight and your training weight may be slightly different to your competition weight, etc. See it all the time where people pull in a suit and they go and underperform at competitions because the sizing slightly out to what they've been training in, etc. So yeah, some good recommendations there for you. What's the ideal footwear for strongman? So this depends on the different event. So I'll go for best footwear for deadlift to start off with. So I would say that the best footwear is something that's going to keep you as close to the ground as possible whilst maintaining a good solid tripod foot, or being able to drive through your foot evenly. So the base of the big toe, base of the little toe, and the heel. I would say that for a lot of people, they can manage this in barefoot. It's perfect. It's legal in strongman. You can go barefoot or just your socks. And obviously you can't be closer to the ground than that. So it's ideal in terms of range of motion benefits. So the limitation of this for people who struggle to keep a stable foot. So for example, myself, my limitation when I go barefoot is that my feet turn out as a drive, and my hips externally rotate a lot, and my foot, I struggle to maintain the foot integrity. In terms of the tripod foot, I roll over to the outside of my feet, so the weight drive is going through my heel and like the outside of my foot, and I struggle to push through the inside of the foot. So with me, so obviously if I've got no footwear on, the grip it just slides out, and I kind of lose quite a lot of power and integrity of posture and stuff like that. So I find for me what works well is getting some kind of footwear with that's really really flat and with plenty of grip on. I've tried with socks, but with socks with rubber tips. So if it's only a subtle thing for you, then getting the things like the silverback do socks, which are fantastic, that have like rubber bits on the bottom, so if you're just slipping a little bit, that grip can just be enough to maintain that integrity. Whereas somebody like me, I have a better success with, I used to have some CrossFit shoes that were brilliant because they're really, really flat, but I could grip the floor and kind of maintain the integrity of the tripod foot without losing the base of the big toe. So that they were really good. So other shoes that I've used, that like I've actually used my truck pull shoes just by accident one time. So like climbing shoes, and they worked really well because they've got really good grip, and they're really, really close to the ground, but really well supported around the ankle as well. So they worked well for me. But yeah, I'd say for most people, just barefoot. But if you're watching your videos and as long as your feet are starting and finishing in the same position that you want to, and they're not moving anywhere, they're not collapsing in, they're not moving out or whatever, then barefoot is going to be the way for most people. So benefit of weightlifting shoes. I'll talk about the deadlifting benefit for me. Quite a few people have asked me recently, why are you using weightlifting shoes for deadlift? And I would not recommend this for 99% of people, because it's changing, it's altering your center of mass because your heels are up and whatever. But the other thing is you're increasing the range of motion that you're having to work through as well. So you're essentially lifting through a bit of a deficit. So altering the center of mass is the thing that you won't want to do for most people who feel good, like say producing a lot of force with the feet flat on the ground. The limitation for me with an issue that I'm working around at the minute is what's happening when I've got a bit like a hip issue that triggers when my hip externally rotates, and basically my external rotators of the hip are really overactive, and they're producing a lot of tension. And what's happening is when I'm triggering this position, I'm letting my knees go out. As I'm getting into a deadlift start position in just my flats, I feel that as soon as I produce force, my foot is wanting to turn. I'm fighting against my foot turning out and slipping out as soon as I brace and try and push up. This effect, which this slight rotation of the hip is triggering my hip issue that I'm managing. Whereas if I go with a slightly elevated heel, that's giving me a slightly more knee travel over the bar, what I'm able to do is producing the same amount of force, my foot stays. It's a lot easier to maintain the foot integrity and keeping my foot in the same position, and therefore controlling the hip moving out and then the foot moving out, and therefore not triggering my issue as much. So if you've seen me on social media posting up deadlifts with lifting shoes, then don't copy me. Context is key. This is something that I've just found out by mistake. I realized that after I was using my lifting shoes for squatting, and then I was started off doing say some light deadlift volume stuff after squatting, and I just couldn't be bothered taking my shoes off. And then I realized that my deadlifts were feeling a lot better than when I was just warming up for deadlifts and when I was fresh. And then I just played around and then analyzed the technique difference and came to this conclusion. So I've stuck with it for a little while. The goal will be to get back to being able to deadlift in my bare feet without my hip turning out. And then therefore I'm going to be lifting the weight through not an extended range of motion. But on the flip side to that, for people who are looking for blanket kind of ways to do things, like I would say, take everything that everybody else says with a pinch of salt, find your own way, find your own philosophy that's unique to your unique experiences and what you've been exposed to, and try some different things, because you will be surprised that things that work for the masses might not work for you, which is fine, and you can probably all think of something that fits into that straight away. But also you'll find things that is against the grain that works really well for you, and don't be afraid to embrace it if it's feeling good. So in terms of benefit of the weightlifting shoe, in terms of the weightlifting shoes versus flat shoes for overhead events, so the great thing about weightlifting shoes is that it allows you to fit for you. It gives you, a lot of people say it gives you kind of ankle dorsiflexion range of motion, which it basically gives you more of an ankle bend, which it technically doesn't, but it does allow the same effect as having ankle dorsiflexion, which is allowing the knee to track and the knee to flex and the knee to track forwards, which is brilliant for overhead events, where the main factor in overhead events is when we're applying leg drive, is what we want to do to maximize the leg drive, the leg drive into the object, and therefore power transfer into the object, is we want to put as much power in from the lower body whilst maintaining the integrity of the vertical torso. So regardless of whether you're doing dumbbell, axle, log, whatever, you're going to be looking to maintain that vertical torso. So wearing the lifting shoes just makes it an easier task in terms of skill to basically bend at your ankles, knees, and hips to get to the point where you can apply, where you've got leg drive to apply to the object, and whilst maintaining that torso integrity. So basically, a way that you can test this is next time you have your lifting shoes, like just put your back against a wall and see how far you can just squat down whilst keeping your shoulders and butt in contact with the wall, and then compare it with your just doing it in flats, and you'll find that in flats you're prone to you're gonna run out of range of motion quicker, where it turns into a hinge at the torso to provide you with more ankle, knee, and hip bend, which for overhead events is going to mean that rack position is going to be lost, and that object is going to be come out in front of you. So how flat shoes can be beneficial for overhead events. So for people who follow my training, like I'll actually rotate through different footwear. So I wear lifting shoes most of the time for overhead events, but I'll do sometimes where I train in flats. I think it's important for strongman that you don't get too caught up in perfect conditions, because you may be lifting you may be preparing in your lifting shoes on your lifting platform, and then you might be doing log press on a slanted car park where you're going against a slight incline, which is offsetting the effect of your lifting shoes. It might be wonky, whatever. So I'm a massive fan of like working through different types of shoes, also different places in the gym. Sometimes I lift on rubber, sometimes on lifting platforms, sometimes with a small area in front and behind me, sometimes on the AstroTurf, sometimes on like a purposely wet bit of the gym. Like I think these are all trainable things that prepare you well for competition. The other advantage of wearing flat shoes and doing some training in flat shoes, like I've mentioned about the weightlifting shoes facilitating this knee flexion whilst maintaining the vertical torso, which is great in terms of power it lets you access. That's specific to applying to the to whatever lift you're doing. But it does this by harnessing the ability to let the knee track forward whilst keeping your heels down, which in turn some people may find that it does expose the knee a little bit more, because you're going to be using the knee flexion a little bit more. So you may find that if you're doing a lot of volume doing this, that you may find that actually doing a little bit of work in your flats may be more friendly for some people to recover from. So it can be a way of just like, if you're doing overhead 3 times a week and if you're doing it in your lifting shoes, one day you push press, another day you jerk, another day you're doing log push press or whatever, and you're feeling like your knees are getting pretty smoked at the end of a week, you may find that doing like just one of the sessions or part of the sessions in flats is just limiting that knee flexion a little bit, which may be easier for some people to recover from. And also it can be just a way of reinforcing skill, because actually you can use it as a constraint to challenge your proprioception in terms of it's going to be more difficult in terms of skill to maintain that into that vertical torso. But is it still possible? Yeah, of course it is. But so you can use it as a constraint and a challenge, but also as a way to manage recovery. So if you use flats for overhead, should you also use them for squats? I think this is a good question. And again, I'm a massive fan of changing up the stimulus, changing up the footwear. It depends on the goal, depends on the context, depends on what you're aiming for. Are you doing a phase where you're really, really pushing your overhead, for instance? So do you need to get better at overhead for your next comp or next season? Of which, if you want to get better at applying leg drive, I would be looking at maintaining a vertical torso with you and getting stronger at maintaining a vertical torso with your squat variations. So with this, I would be looking at wearing lifting shoes, and I would be because it's going to facilitate you keeping a more upright torso. You can do front squats, zercher squats, jerk dips, dip and drives. All these are great tools that are going to make you better at maintaining that vertical torso. And but equally, if your goal is in the phase to improve your deadlift, for instance, and you're going to deadlift with your if you're going to deadlift in flats or you're going to deadlift in bare feet, I would say for the squats, I'd be looking to mimic that pattern. I'd be looking to do squats in barefoot in your deadlift stance. I'll be looking at doing, say, even good morning variations in that bit. But just think about, because what you can do is learn how to control the dip and control what you're doing with your lower body. You can mimic it with your squats, and you can change your squats to suit whatever you're training in that particular phase. So yeah. So why barefoot shoes for moving events? So weightlifting shoes versus flat shoes for the overhead events. So I'll show you these are the shoes that I wear and I recommend. I've just bought a pair for my partner for a birthday. These are just absolutely brilliant. Absolutely love them. So you can go to the Strength Shop website. If you use the code LBSC5, you'll be able to get 5% discount too. Barefoot shoes for moving events. Why would you use barefoot shoes for moving events? So for me, if you're wearing trainers, I do find that the problem with wearing trainers is they're often very supported and very spongy. So it's a bit like most of us find it better to squat and deadlift in bare feet, or like say deadlift in bare feet, because versus wearing your gym trainers. It's like one of the first things that you get to know when you're training in a gym, I suppose, is that it just feels better and more stable and better to produce force. And it's just simply because the trainers are providing that bit of instability that you're having to work hard to find stability. Whereas if you're just in your bare feet, then you're a lot more stable and you can produce a lot more force. And the force that you're producing can transfer into the thing into the ground a lot more efficiently. So I'm a massive fan of using barefoot shoes for moving events versus trainers. So these are the shoes that I recommend. Like, I started literally maybe 3 years ago. I just went into Amazon, typed barefoot shoes, and at the time I just bought the cheapest ones, and I've had about 12 pairs, and I think with these ones here, so like 37 quid. They're just absolutely brilliant. So I'll add the link into the description of this, and yeah, they're really good. And if you just look back at any of the competitions that I've done, I'll find a competition that we've done recently. So let's have a look at that. So this here, I'm wearing the barefoot shoes. So winning the farmers event here. There's the barefoot shoes in action.
Josh Paul, nice drop, and he smiles. Awesome, congratulations.
Let's have a look at that.
And
this is the yoke. Again, there's the barefoot shoes.
On the finish line and done.
And so the benefit of the barefoot shoes for me have been they've really helped me improve my recovery. My recovery as well. At the same time of when wearing barefoot shoes, my recovery in terms of my lower body and my knees specifically has significantly improved. Yeah, I'm a massive fan, and I just find that they're good and they're really versatile, regardless of the event. So very often I'll wear my barefoot shoes for my whole session, and yeah, just feel really good. So how to avoid hip flexor pain and shin splints. So the biggest thing with this would be, if it's a specific issue that keeps cropping up, I would say get in contact with a rehab professional, physio, somebody that you trust, and get some advice of a professional. But generally, what you'll be able to do is alter your programming to build things, like just to be progressive and find a dose of the specific thing that you want to do that you can recover from, and then build it up. So most times when people are getting kind of general hip flexor pain or general shin splints, they've just done a little bit too much from what their body can handle at that particular moment. So I see it very often with moving events where people don't train moving events, and then they get a yoke that's coming up in a comp or heavy frame or something, and then they're going week one of the prep, they're going 70-80% of the comp weight, and they're doing a few sets, feeling okay, managing it because they're strong and able. But then a couple of days later, they're paying for it, because even though that they're strong and able to do something, they haven't got that specific conditioning to be able to recover from it. So it's a very similar principle why I've stopped playing other sports as well. Like I've stopped playing tennis, football, rugby, whatever, even though I would love to just dip in and out and play when I can. Because the problem is, because I'm strong and fit, like I could go and play 90 minutes of football, really enjoy it, and do pretty well, feel pretty good. But then the day after, 2-3 days after, I know that I'm gonna struggle to recover, because even though that I've got the strength and fitness and I'm able to do something, I haven't got the specific conditioning anymore that's going to be able to help me recover. So it's not the fact that the football's the wrong thing for me. It's just the fact that I'm not conditioned to jump in and out of that so anymore. Whereas when I used to be playing football at different intensities 3 to 5 times a week, I felt amazing and my recovery was good. But because it was the specific, I had that specific conditioning. So it's the same kind of principle. So the big error that I see is people don't do enough work in their kind of off season, or when they're not training for a comp. Like they'll go back to the very often I see people using the logic of using squats and deadlift and stuff to strengthen the legs to be able to do moving events better. But realistically, it won't. And if you're using squats and deadlifts to build up your specific fitness for your moving events, there's no plyometric, there's no shock absorption component when you're doing that. It's just all about force reduction, whereas you need to expose yourself to force absorption as well. So you may find that doing stuff like the stuff that I recommend that I do all year round, that takes me about 15 minutes in my training week. I'll show you that I've done a video on it recently. So just search into YouTube and search for sprint drill, strongman, or British strongman coaching, whatever, and just go and watch this. Go and watch this video that I've put together. That at first I felt a bit of an idiot doing in the gym. You can see these are the 5 simple drills that I've done for the last 2.5 years, basically. But yeah, the big thing that the big benefit that I've got from this, other than just my footwork improving in terms of my feet passing it, like I used to waste so much energy moving out to the side on yoke and farmers. So now my gait is a lot better, a lot more efficient. But the other thing that's specific to this question is my recovery capacity is significantly improved, because these drills here are even though they're unloaded, they're all plyometric, they're all high impact, they're all like every drill that you do, you're practicing absorbing your body weight, and that's enough for a lot of us to get a brilliant training effect. We don't need to be lifting, carrying weight to build up this kind of conditioning level. Like you'll find that if you do this alongside alongside what you're doing with your yoke and your frame and your farmers and your medley stuff, you'll find that it really contributes to be able to take more out of that stuff. So yeah, I would definitely consider adding this in and just starting just follow the instructions on the video, actually, because it encourages you to just start off really, really easy and then slowly progress it and build it up. So yeah, the answer to this question would be seek a professional's advice for the specific diagnosis of what your problem is. But I find that a lot of people will benefit from actually just being more structured with the program and starting off at a lower level and being patient with the progressions. If you're a lighter lifter, is it worth spending time to trying to nail log split jerk, or better to get stronger on push press? So personally, I don't think this changes whether you're a lighter lifter or a bigger lifter, to be honest. I think that maybe it does, actually, because I do find that lighter lifters and lifters who are smaller may have a tendency, may have a harder time finding a position where, like, if you're a bigger person and you've got your chest to your back is that wide and the log is so wide, you're going to find it easier to find a rack position where basically because the proportion of the log diameter to the width of your torso is going to be smaller than somebody who's got the same size log but is got a smaller torso, for instance. So therefore, in terms of balancing the center of mass, it's going to be it can be more challenging for the person with a smaller mass or a lighter lifter in general, assuming that the log stays constant or with any given log. So yeah, it is a consideration. So generally, even though I do find that most people will. I think most people should have a go at jerking, but I would probably learn how to do it on a. If you're going to commit to learning a jerk, I would say learn on a barbell first, because going back to that principle of aligning the center of mass, so thinking about the barbell through the side, through the center of the pins, and align it with midfoot, you've just got an easier task and more margin for error to actually learn the skills of the jerking and stuff than learning with the log. And then once you've got the footwork and you know how to do it with that kind of thing that's more forgiving in terms of keeping it aligned with midfoot throughout the lift, then progress onto a log. So if you're looking for somewhere to start with split jerks, then I would say just type into Google, just have a look at this split jerk British Strongman, the beginner's guide for Strongman. So I talk in the just have a look at this, and there's some other videos that I've done. These two will show you the ideal positioning that you can use. Just measure out where your feet should be landing from Tarokati, and then from Sarah Davis, like showing you from the side what you should look like ideally. So just have a flick through that. There's some other stuff if you just search for split jerk British Strongman in Google and have a look at the YouTube. And then there's a 10-minute split jerk guide there on using an axle bar. It's simple, because I find that there's loads of stuff out there from a weightlifting standpoint that's maybe a little bit too technical for somebody in Strongman who's already strong at push pressing, who's just wanting to give split jerk a go, and they're not wanting to get too deep into. Whereas if you're committing to weightlifting and the jerk being, again, a third of your sport, pretty much, a clean jerk snatch, then a lot of your training time is obviously allocated to that. Whereas for Strongman, it simply isn't. So I've just given you a few shortcuts there and if you leave any questions in the comments, I'll get back to you on there. So feel free to do that. But yeah, I find that a lot of people have a lot of success in learning split jerk on an axle and a barbell, and then whilst learning how to push press really well on a log, and then over time maybe bridging that gap. And when you get opportunity to learn if you're finding it tough to learn how to split jerk, you're just giving yourself a lot more difficult task trying to do it on the log as well, because you're just making it more complex. And if you want to go into a more depth and a bigger technical breakdown of this, then go again, search into Google, search into YouTube, search log British Strongman, look into log 101 with Joe. And I haven't done the chapters yet, but there's chapters on 2 log split jerk techniques. If you look at the start of the video, if you look at the 19 minutes in, you go to this
90 kilos,
and we're going to be breaking down
reps, I think, in 75 seconds.
Breaking down my
what do you think,
power
Joe?
jerk technique on there when I do it for reps, but also like an analysis of
obviously from side to side, I've got an imbalance there where I might be.
And then towards the end of the video, there's a good breakdown on here with
press.
There's also a breakdown of the
clean
log
power,
split
by the
jerk
way.
on this, and an analysis. So yeah, check those out, and then comment on any of those, and then I'll get back to you in future videos. Why do we see people jerking axles and barbells, but rarely odd implements such as stones and sandbags? So it's simply because of the margin for error of controlling the rack. So what we want to do with any implement that we're lifting is we want to be, as we're applying leg drive, we want to be able to keep the center of mass of the object aligned with midfoot. So on most of the objects, look from the side, look where midfoot is, and you're going to find it easier to apply leg drive to it, regardless of the object, is if at the bottom of the dip the center of mass of whatever you're lifting is aligned with midfoot. So you can imagine as the implements get more awkward, you're going to be fighting to find that central point. So any kind of degree out in the dip is just going to be magnified massively, because you've just simply got more mass pulling you forward and magnifying the error. So the larger the diameter of the implement, the less the margin for error is really. So if you think about it as like a continuum, you'll find a barbell easier to jerk because it's thin, even than an axle. Because even if you can almost dip slightly forward with a barbell and it will still remain in contact with your torso and your shoulders and stuff, and therefore you can transfer the power into the bar. Axle still feels very similar to barbell, but obviously the thicker you go, the less forgiving it is. And then you go to a log, like a 9-inch log, and you'll probably find that easier to jerk than, say, an 11-inch log and then a 13-inch log. And then just as you get wider, it's just getting more difficult to find that central point on the dip and drive. That's as simple as it is. And then, so obviously you get to the point with a sandbag or a stone, for instance, and you've got a big part of the object that's away from midfoot. So it does feel more difficult to control the dip and drive, and then therefore apply leg drive to. So you couple this with awkwardness of an object that you don't really have much grip on. Say it's a wide implement with your hands really wide, like a wide block or something. Then your arms aren't in a good position to kind of get you out of jail, or your arms back like by a margin for error, or they're not in a good position to help you with the lift, I suppose. Another thing with sandbags and stones, you may find that because of the overhead position, it's narrower than what it would be on, say, a log or a barbell. So then the shoulder external rotation, flexibility, and thoracic upper spine mobility requirements of this is a lot more demanding. So you'll actually find that a lot of people struggle actually struggle with the shoulder flexion with the hands narrow. So therefore that kind of reliable catch position doesn't feel reliable anymore. So not only are you making the rack position more difficult, and then it's in turn going to make the dip and drive more difficult, the overhead positioning is going to be more challenging as well, with some of these things that are narrower than usual because of the flexibility demands. Programming technique tips when learning to split jerk a log for people who are okay but not split jerking a barbell. So I would say get really confident with the barbell. Get better at lifting with a barbell until you're really, really confident. Just because the barbell is giving you the easiest task in learning the footwork, because it's giving you the easiest task in terms of controlling the dip and drive and applying leg drive to the bar without it rolling. It's the most forgiving, so you can get your dip and drive slightly out and still jerk really well. So in terms of I would split the lift up in terms of programming, and I would look at jerk recoveries and look at split jerk recoveries, and just type into YouTube, just find split jerk recovery. And basically what you're doing, you're taking the dip and drive element out of it, and you're just practicing the footwork of, so you're putting it in a position where you've completed a perfect dip and drive, and then you're just practicing the down phase and actually receiving. So you split this up and use it to identify which bit you actually need to work on. Because what a lot of people will find, that a lot of people who split jerk, a lot of people think, oh, well, my balance is rubbish. I'm not very good at split jerk because my balance is rubbish. Whereas actually you put them into a jerk recovery and they're really, really strong in the split, and they're really good at the receiving position is really good. But the problem is the receiving position isn't good after a poor dip and drive. So basically the improve the dip and drive for that person, improve the dip and drive, and basically learn how to apply force to the bar and get it moving vertically, then all of a sudden they're giving themselves an easier task to do the balance element. So yeah, I would say split it up and identify which bit you need to work on, and then you can say, right, you can double down on the right. Actually, give myself a perfect dip and drive position, and then go to do the landing the split jerk, and it feels great. Or that bit doesn't feel good, but your dip and drive feels great. Then double down on the jerk recoveries for a while until your footwork feels amazing. Then put it back together, and then. But maybe that your dip and drive's all out. Your jerk recoveries are good, but then you go to dip and drive, and the bar's going forward, so you're always chasing it forward, and you're always wanting to step forward, and you receive it. So have a look at your dip and drive from the side, and you think, oh my goodness, like I'm hinging forward, or as I'm going to start or my dip looks pretty good, but as I start the drive, my elbows drop. So just identifying these little bits, and then you might double down on that and do some jerk dips and get stronger in the dip and better at maintaining. You might have to do a bit of rack position work where you actually get more comfortable with your arms lower and the object resting on you. And then once you've got that and all that feeling good, then go back to split jerking a log and apply the same principles, and just think, right, well, okay, I would do all that would be the ideal, in my opinion, would be learn how to split jerk with the barbell, split it all up into the different elements, just to tell you what you need to work on, and you'll be able to self-critique that. And then at the same time, because I find that with the log, where it's won or lost, regardless of the push pressing or split jerking, is learning to dip and drive with an optimal bar path. So, i.e., punching a little bit in it, punching and dip and drive with the log in a perfectly straight line, ever so slightly behind you. So you can learn how to do that in isolation. You can be push pressing there, get that nailed, whilst you're giving yourself an easier task to do all the technical work on the barbell. stuff. And then once you nailed the barbell stuff, then couple them both together. And yeah. Best exercises for improving front rack mobility. So I would just, so for me, the best things, like I'm a massive fan of specificity with front rack stuff. So just literally getting into a front rack position and holding it. And it's mind-numbingly boring to just think about how effective that is. Like, you just spend more time there, then you are literally you're gonna get better at it and more comfortable. So obviously I'm aware of the psychological restrictions with that, i.e. it's boring. So I personally don't like doing it. I like doing stuff where I'm constrained to using the rack position well to accumulate time with the rack position. So basically what I use to maintain my rack position is I do lots of variations of front squats, and if my rack position feeling pretty poor or I need to work on it or uncomfortable, then I'll do my front squats and then I'll do a bit of a hold on the last rep of each set. But yeah, just doing front squats as an actual thing to improve your rack position is just going to be absolutely magic for most people. And if you feel like you can't achieve that position to start, then getting on the continuum, so starting with, like, say even starting off here, doing like a cross grip front squat to start off with is going to build up that upper back strength and that thoracic mobility, and then progressing to getting a strap around the bar and then holding the strap whilst getting this position, and then therefore it's going to provide you a slightly bigger range, help with the range of motion, but also going to put a little like less pressure on your wrists, and then progress to, when that gets comfortable, to a full grip, and maybe a full grip with your wrist wraps on to give you a bit of support, and then eventually full grip without the wrist wraps. So if you're looking for something more specific, I would recommend this one. U-tab. This is one that I've used and sent to clients before. So improve your.
In this episode, I'm going to teach you how to
improve your front rack mobility.
Front rack mobility for your front
by Squat University.
I want you to have the capability to
So
fully move.
Test, external rotate, soft tissue mobilize. So yeah, just have a flick through that.
So today, what I'm going to show you.
And there's some good drills there. But yeah, if you wanted something specific, then I recommend that. But I think most of us will just benefit from strategically spending a little bit more time there. So someone's asked about what like in terms of knee recovery, like the knee recovery, dumbbell feels the nicest, then axle and barbell, then logs less forgiving, then anything chunky feels worse in terms of knee recovery. So the dumbbell is probably going to be the nicest because of the load, and you can because it's going to be generally lighter than the other stuff. In terms of axle and barbell and the other stuff, assuming the weight's pretty similar, the positional requirements are very different. So if you think about it, the thinner the implement, the thinner the implement, the easier you're going to be able to align the center of mass of the object to midfoot, and therefore the easier it is to align, the less demanding on your knee flexion it is to maintain a vertical torso as you dip down. So assuming that we're going to maintain the integrity of the vertical torso, because as we dip, because that's going to enable us to transfer the lower body power into the bar without or the object without the object falling off our torso. So if you think about it, the further the object is away from us, in order to restrict a hinge, because that's what we want to do. And the further the object is away from us, we want to hinge. And the only way that we can offset, if we hinge too much, then the object is going to fall or feel really, really difficult and going to be useless for applying leg drive into it. So the way that we can offset the hinge is by tracking the knee forward and tracking the knee forward more. So because with a barbell, we're going to be forced into a hinge less because it's closer to our center of mass by default because it's so thin, then the hinge that we're being forced to is less. So then the knee travel to offset that is going to be less. Whereas with a thicker object that's basically giving us a harder task to keep that vertical torso, we're just going to have to track the knee forward a lot more to maintain the integrity of the vertical torso, and therefore putting the more shear forces through the knee. Getting the best mindset for the weight category route to keep away from mental exhaustion. How do you keep the balance between feeling focused but not burning out? So this is a great question for people who are getting into doing the weight classes. And at first, when you first start off, it's like anything. There's the novelty and there's the fun factor of, if it feels fine cutting weight, whatever, staying at a certain weight because you're so motivated, because it's exciting and whatever, and then you don't really know necessarily what level you are when you're starting out, and you might just think, oh well, actually I'll give this a go because I could do pretty well. It might be in your lane, it might be qualifying for a national competition that you didn't think was ever going to be possible, and then you go and do that and then qualify for the national competition. And then it's another comp that you've got to make weight for, which is fine because you're buzzing and you're like, oh my God, I'm amazing. I've got this opportunity, so I don't mind making weight. I'm really motivated, blah, 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 blah. And then you go and do that. And then you've found your level. And this level might be, oh, well, I finished there. And next year I'm going to go through the circuit again. And then I'm going to look to progress on my place. But the problem is that as you climb up, as you progress through levels, more opportunities arise. So this one might be, say you've done a national competition and then you've qualified to, say, Britain's or whatever, of where you need to make weight again. But then at the same time, there might be, say, I don't know, like a log and deadlift championship that comes up that you want to be part of because there's an opportunity to lift in front of the crowd or whatever. There might be something, another thing that comes up. There's all these different opportunities. So obviously, the newer you are to it, these opportunities, the less daunting it is, and you just think, oh well, crack on. It's all exciting, blah 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 blah. But it is taxing and challenging. But that's kind of outweighed by the experience that you're getting from these amazing opportunities and stuff. But there might come to a point where you find your level, and then you think, right, well, realistically, this is out. Like that last season, I was just finding my level, and I'm going to find it really difficult mentally if I'm going to do that the same amount of comps as last year, making weight or whatever, and doing the training phases to prepare for it, etc. So as time goes on, you need to be a little more selective with it, and so like an example for me, I'm like say going into next year, I've qualified for an international comp. I've qualified for Arnold's under 80s that I wasn't sure I was ever qualified for. So that's going to be like a massive focus for me. And also I want, because I didn't do OSG Worlds this year, in 2022. I want to do that next year, 2023. So then there's two comps that are 6 months apart that I'm going to make weight for, and and put a lot of emphasis in terms of training into. I've also got another comp in May that's another under 90s comp that's abroad. So already my comp season's like it is being mapped out for next year. So if I'm thinking domestically, like just using myself as a case study, I'm thinking domestically, like if I want to do like say England's and then Britain's and then potentially whatever comes from that, there comes a point where the benefit of doing it and the experience outweighs the cost. And if I'm doing that and then potentially doing Europe's and I'm looking to make weight at 85 times in the year, and I'm spending a lot of my time in kind of lower calories than what feel good, what feel really good, and I don't know, I'm feeling restricted. Like, is that going to get to a point where I'm mentally exhausted? Yeah, well, I think it is. So an example for me next year is I'm not going to do England's. I'm not going to do the England's pathway, and I'll be disappointed not to do Britain's as a result. But this is just a thing where I feel that you've got to be proactive in order to avoid burnout and that mental exhaustion. You've got to be proactive and actually, periodize what you do in terms of like not just your training, but also like the mental side as well, and just think, oh, well, actually, and it is tough because like speaking from experience, I'm one of those people I'm used to playing sport every weekend for, I don't know, 20 years of my life, playing football every week, rugby, tennis, whatever, multiple times. So I love competing all the time. I love it, absolutely love it. But I've also got these aspirational goals of where I want to be elite in the weight classes, of which if I am competing all the time, then it does outweigh the progression that I can potentially make in terms of like training blocks and stuff like that. So it is just that obviously there's no right or wrong with this, and it is finding that kind of sweet spot that works for you and taking everything into account. But if after like say your first year of pushing yourself in the weight classes, you're finding that there is this bit of burnout coming, then just being a bit more strategic with it for the following season, and just mapping things out and think, right, begin with the end in mind. Where do you want to finish? Where do you want to finish up? Do you want to finish at a national comp? Do you want to finish at an international comp? And then work backwards from that. And if you really want to finish on the thing at the end, is starting off your season too early is it gonna hold you back a little bit? Like missing out on stuff earlier in the season, is that going to be a better investment for doing stuff at the end of the season? I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think. Best way to practice events when far out from a comp, improving skills, multiple events at a time. So I've talked about this loads before. So I'm a massive fan of keeping a little bit of everything in most of the time in a training phase. So this is particularly easy in your off season. You can do, because you can train things one time a week, multiple times a week, whatever. But the key is undulating the intensities and undulating the expectations of each session. So keeping it dead simple. If you want to train something in terms of getting competition event practice in and improving skill, and you wanted to concentrate on a certain thing, an event's lagging behind something else, and you wanting to train it more frequently. Like if you train it once, you can train it pretty heavy. If you train it twice in a week, pretty heavy, pretty light. If you train it 3 times in a week, pretty heavy, pretty light, somewhere in the middle. If you train it 4 times a week, pretty heavy, pretty light, somewhere in the middle. And then I would say somewhere with like, that's almost like empty bar if you're doing it with a barbell, or providing a different constraint than the load is providing. So if you're doing, like, say, weightlifting variations, you know, like, say, adding pauses in different positions and stuff like that, you can do that with a stick, and there's loads of skill acquisition benefits you can get from doing stuff like that without, whilst almost limiting the kind of amount of volume you're exposing yourself to in terms of external load on your body. So yeah, just check out this. Have a browse through some of the stuff I've done on YouTube, and there's something specific. Then, in fact, check out the if you go to my YouTube homepage, you can see this
assistance exercises. We just want to
show you how to do it actually. So you go to this, how to make your own strongman training program. So click on this,
there's a lot of value
and that'll taught you how to do, like, with 10 exercises here. So we've got deadlift, deadlift assistance, grip, squat, floor to overhead, push press, clean, loading event, speed moving event, endurance moving event, and basically how to write a progressive 4-week block that you can just rinse and repeat and change and tweak, and with a view to developing skills on the specific strongman event. So that'll be perfect for you to download and just have a play with. During load medleys, I usually run out of energy for loading on the final implement. Should I be training carries or loading more to fix this? So it's impossible to say without breaking it down into its individual parts. So do some, like, break down this is a good way to do it, right? Get whatever the loading medley pick a loading medley that's specific to your competition, that maybe from the previous year or something. This is what I've said to it's what I recently said to Paul Smith actually to do for like the medley at, I think, Britain's Strongest Man or whatever. Like, look at what's gone before, and then look at the best guys. So you look at people like, say, Luke Stoltman, Tom Stoltman, for instance. Look at what they're doing on all the individual implements, and do like split times for the different bits. So see how fast they're doing the tire to the tire to wherever they're loading it to. See how fast they're doing it with a keg. See what the timing is for the runs in between. See what the overall time is, and then you can break it down into proportions, and then you can compare yourself to this with the implements in terms of proportion of the speed that you're doing. So you can think, oh well, actually, based on Tom Stoltman or whatever doing that implement, or whatever lane you're in, like the person doing the medley last year. Have a look at, right, well, what were the person that I want to be close to, what were they doing? What were they doing in terms of proportions, right? Their keg to sandbag ratio was blah, blah, blah. And then you work out your keg to sandbag ratio, and you realize that, oh my goodness, like I'm a lot faster at keg loading than I am at sandbag loading. Right, I need to do more work on the sandbag loading. Or you might find that running with the implements, you're really quick, but then proportionally you're losing time when you're running back in between. So actually doing some sprint work, unloaded sprint work, you may actually find that really, really beneficial. Or you may find that you come in to put the object, your runs are really good proportionally, but then you're spending a couple more seconds actually loading the implement, and that's slower than other people, and therefore you have to work on your loading in isolation. But then you can break down the things into isolation, like you say, like break it down into loading, break it down into sprint with an object, break it down into sprints without an object. Is it like work? If all those things are pretty decent in isolation, then it might just be a conditioning thing, or it might be a thing that you actually appear to be struggling with the load just because you're so fatigued from everything else that you're doing. So break it down and try and identify the weakness and what you're weak at. And if it is genuinely because you're struggling with the load and you want to improve technically at the load, if it's because of the height of it. So a couple of tips, what you can do is I would do a protocol where you're doing a really submaximal weight, maybe, I don't know, 50 to 70% of your max. Say you're loading a keg, for instance. And then I would do a session where you're doing singles of progressive height, session 1, and then with the submaximal weight, and then go for a height PB or near a PB, see what your max is. And then say 10 to 15 singles. And then the next week, take like an inch or 2 off your max height and do your 10 to 15 singles at that height. So your average, your volume is done at a lot higher, a higher average. And then you go for week 3, go again with that height, but then try it with a slightly heavier weight. And you do these 3 sessions. It doesn't have to be 3 weeks. It can be 3 sessions. And you're going to be a lot more comfortable with the extension of that implement. And you're going to have provided yourself a structure in which you can learn how to improve your technique into maximizing the extension. And another thing that you might consider would be, is it worth getting the object high? This is a thing that you have to compare, and it's specific to the medley. Is it worth getting the object high as you pick it, so then you have an easier load as you get there? Or is it worth just carrying it in a really strong position and then relapping, etc., when you get to the other side? So this is a thing that you're going to have to consider. Axle technical breakdown. Let's have a look at this. Axle technical breakdown. So we're going to go.
Nice. Come on, to the chest. Come on.
So this is Mark.
Big press. Come on. Up. Nice.
Let's have a look at his axle here. So we'll just put it on repeat.
Nice. Come on, to the chest. Come on. No, come on. Big press. Come on. Up. Nice.
So I'm going to break it down. I'm going to break down it into, I'll say 5 points. I'll say 5 points to this and 5 points to, no, I'll say 3 points, because I think we should. Mark posted this video and he said, "Oh, I've got 5 points that I could work on, and you'll probably find 10 or whatever." And I said to him, the important thing when you're breaking down technique is not how many errors that you can find. It's finding the most important ones that are going to provide the biggest benefit for the easiest investment, if that makes sense. So looking for the smallest hinges that open the biggest doors. So with Mark here, I think a big thing for him is going to be getting this rack position feeling light. So the rack position looks pretty good, and it's a lot better than it used to be. So you can see that the weight's pretty comfortable on his torso, and you can see by the dip actually that at the bottom of the dip, the key thing for a rack position, don't get confused with a weightlifter looking super flexible. I'm talking strongman rack position here. We're looking for a place where the weight is basically resting or on your torso that can be maintained when you're fully extended, and that you can maintain that integrity all the way to the bottom of the dip. So you can see with Mark, he's doing that, and that's really, really good actually. So you see people, big error obviously you see is people dipping and then their elbows rolling all over the place. So a big thing that Mark is doing exceptionally well here is, I'm a massive fan of keeping the elbows low if that's where they want to be. Like you see a lot of people, they're trying to force their elbows forward to give them that may look prettier to the untrained eye, and when they're at the start of the rack position looks good, but then they go to the dip and they can't help but elbows drop when they start to drive and apply leg drive to the bar. So it's pointless. It's pointless having this beautiful looking rack position that you can't maintain as you start the drive. So credit to Mark here. I think it looks really good. So I'm going to just give him credit on that to really focus on that rack position and keep it going. So the other thing that I'd say and improving, which he's picked up by himself actually, is let's have a look at the connection between the bar and the torso. So what's happening if we play it real time? It almost looks like the bar's wobbling. It almost looks like it's got a bit of flex in the bar, which it hasn't. It's just because what's happening here, ever so slightly, is he's losing contact with the bar. He's losing contact, and it's subtle. It's subtle. But what we want to do to maximize the leg drive into the bar is we want to keep that bar connected to our torso, and almost like make it at one. Almost make, rather than being two objects, i.e. the torso and the bar, we want it to be one solid unit. So a thing that might help him in the rack position is just trying to relax those arms a little bit more, and almost let that barbell, almost let the axle sink down, and almost like feel it connect into your, in Mark's case, into his like sternum, into it, whatever, instead of holding it slightly off. So you may find that actually doing this as a drill by itself with lighter weight, may actually find that dropping the elbow sleeves just for some technical proprioceptive feedback may actually help him build that connection between the keep connected with the torso, etc. But assuming that he gets that pretty good, which it is pretty good, don't get me wrong, that a thing that can happen is on the dip and the dip, we can dip a little bit too quickly and a little bit too sharply. So if he's creating a bit of a disconnect here and then dipping quite fast, basically what he's going to do is get his torso is going to accelerate faster down than gravity is accelerating the bar down. And therefore it creates a little gap, which is making it a lot more inefficient, because not only are you disconnected with the bar and therefore not transferring power into it optimally, but also when Mark's on his way up, the bar is on its way down. So we need both the forces going in the same direction for maximum efficiency. So another little tip here for Mark would be for people who, if we can get you clean, if we can get landing in a good rack position really, really quickly, that's where you'll find that your axle feels the best generally, is when you land it in a position and you almost feel like you're ready to go straight away. So you're minimizing the time spent in each position. You want to minimize the time from the ground to that rack position where you can start the dip. So there's a couple of things that you can improve here. Is the turnover. It's pretty good. It is pretty good. Considering he's got elbow sleeves on, it is pretty good. But common error, looping forward and then pulling it back into yourself there. Whereas if Mark could get his elbows a little bit further forward, it's simply going to, your elbows further forward, it's going to, if you can just, people listening to this, you put your elbows in front of your body and then imagine your hands scraping up towards your chest. You can do that a lot easier than if your elbow's behind you. If your elbow's behind you, your hand goes out in front, and therefore the bar's going to go out in front. So yeah, getting the elbows a little bit more forward, basically as far as forward as you can without feeling like the bar's going to drop off. And then I suppose linked to the same thing is minimizing time spent there. You see Mark spending quite a bit. See some of the really good guys at axle, they're almost just bouncing it off straight away from that first position, whereas Mark is holding all the weight there at that position, which is going to be fatiguing him somewhat. And then let's have a look at the jerk. So looks pretty damn good in terms of timing. So he's driving up. He's putting a lot of force into the bar, which is great. And then once he's put force into the bar, then he's dropping down. So even though that Mark will probably feel that he's really, really, really low where he's receiving, if he can work on just getting that, like the knees flexed a little bit further and the hips, like just basically getting his torso a little bit lower. And I'm saying like an inch. He hasn't even got to press that lockout. You see, like he's receiving it here and then finishing it with an easy press. But when you get your jerk right, it's no press at all. It's just a catch. So that's what's going to add the next 10 kilos to his axle. Just getting comfortable receiving a little bit lower. Let's have a look at Dan's. So what I love about Dan's turnover here, right, what we just said about Mark, right, Dan's elbows are a little bit more forward, and therefore he can keep the bar closer in this turnover. So that's excellent. Considering it's near maximal weight as well, that turnover is really good. So the bar goes, he keeps the bar close off the belt and then drops nicely underneath. It's nice. Another thing that I like about Dan's technique is, whereas in the previous video, Mark was like almost sticking his tummy forward and putting his weight for his heels quite a lot. Whereas you see so therefore the weight's more for your heels. You're going to be sending more power forwards, and you're going to be more power forwards. Even though you're in a powerful position, but you're projecting power onto the bar that's going to send it out. Whereas you want to send the bar vertical on axle. So you can see what Dan does really, really well, actually. He's in this rack position here, in all the positions, actually. He's got a lovely flex knee there. So with that flex knee, his ankles, knees, and hips are flex now. So all he needs to do is, if he explodes up and doesn't guide the bar whatsoever, the bar goes pretty much vertical. Yeah, whereas Mark was a little bit more knee straight. So that's in turn going to give him a nice easy turnover there. So great work on that, mate. So what I would say, because you think to improve, what I would say is back yourself on that. I'd be training I think you should do more in your warm up where you're training sub-maximal and try and bounce it off the first bounce, especially if you're managing to do double overhand. You should be able to just back yourself and flick that off like basically catch where you do that one there. You should just be aiming to from the ground, catching that position off the belt, and then send it straight up. And then the time under tension it's going to get to that rack position. It's going to feel so much easier. So great stuff. Let's have a look at the rack, the dip and drive. And again, another thing to improve, Dan, would be there's a lot of time here. You're not altering your position there. You're just kind of you just look like you're getting yourself psyched up. Spending a bit too much time there. You don't need to. You're not adjusting your position. You're in a good position, so you just need to back yourself. So a thing that I don't like so much compared to my own technique, what works really well, I'm imagining I'm doing a maximal weight here, and I've received that clean, and I'm ready to go now. I've gone. So I've received that clean, and I'm dipping and driving. I've gone, and I'm doing that because I get my technique so kind of consistent that I can do that whilst on the same breath. So you can see what Dan's doing here. It's probably why he's spending a lot of time psyching himself up, is because he's getting ready to take that breath. And it's really, really, when you've got like over your body weight hanging in this position here in front of you, crushing you down, it's really hard to get that kind of get a full decent breath in. So I think it's a worthy trade-off of getting so technically efficient that you can either take your last breath on the belt, or with some people, sometimes if I'm doing it, I'll take my last breath from the floor, and it works really well. So take my last breath. I'll take my last breath as I'm going to pick. I'll go bounce, receive, still hold my breath, jerk or press. So that's going to be a thing that can really help him. And I think what it looks like on the jerk here, look, it looks like he's holding a bit too much tension in his arms. It looks like he's pressing too much. He's not trusting his legs. He's not trusting his legs to do the work. It looks like he's getting to there and he's already pushing up with his hands and his arms. So that kind of tension with the upper body is where he's like, it looks like he's pushing with the arms and then getting it to lock out. It almost looks like a split press, if you will, rather than like a fluid dip and drive and then a catch. So it just looks like one movement where he's kind of driving up into the bar, using a lot of upper body to push up and split press. Looks pretty good, looks easy, but I think it's going to look easier if he learns how to separate the dip and drive with the legs and then drop and catch. So yeah, a little cue for Dan to work on. So I understand why he's doing this, because obviously it feels heavy and it's challenging. But a thing that'll help him, because obviously it's counterintuitive to try and keep relaxing certain parts of the body when you feel like you need more tension. But a thing where Dan should focus his energy and he'll get a better return on is, instead of creating more tension by pushing through with the arms, what he should focus on is try and drive with the same amount of intent. Instead of pushing his arms into the bar, driving his torso into the bar as forcefully as possible. So like he's trying to forcefully heave his delts and his torso into that bar to create the power, rather than pushing with the hands.